Hello, I'm Sarah Burke, Uni ID 3092820, and I'm going to talk about a study done on autistic classroom management strategies. So this study is by Conray, Almas, Ladwig, Sellers and Valcant out of the University of Florida, and it's titled The Effects of Proximity on Classroom Behaviours of Students with Autism in General Education Settings, and it was published in 2004. So the aim of this study was to descriptively examine the effects of adult proximity on both appropriate and challenging behaviours of students with autism included in mainstream education. So this was really done within the frame of understanding that there's been an increasing trend in autistic diagnoses over the past few decades, and that more and more of these are being included in general education classes, and that many of these students exhibit a lack of engagement and behaviours that interfere with their own education and with the education of their classmates. And a further problem is that many teachers just don't know very much about this. They don't know how to deal with this. And there needs to be more study done on this issue. So traditionally, behaviours were dealt with in this consequence-based procedure idea. So reinforcement and punishment. But more recently, there's been a switch to antecedent-based intervention, and that is prevention. Now, proximity is one form of prevention, and it is quite simply just having an adult within arm's reach. They don't really have to be doing anything, just being present. Now, the reason I chose this study is that I think that it's very important to scientifically back the use of LSAs, which I know are a very commonly used human resource. And I, in fact, and have for the past 5 years been an LSA in a special education school. I have an interest in teaching special education as well, so I think it's important for me to know, when I am a teacher, how and why to use this human resource if it's available to me. So I think it's very important to look at this scientific backing. So there were 6 participants. They had to meet 4 key distinguishing factors. So they had to be diagnosed with autism, they had to be included in mainstream education for at least 50% of the day, they had to exhibit problem behaviours that interfered, and they had to be between 5 and 8 years old. So some of the behaviours these students exhibited were disruption, inappropriate vocalisation, off-task behaviours, and stereotypy. And all of these were deemed as disruptive to their own and to others' educations. And they were all in 6 different classes across 6 different schools. 5 of the 6 had a teacher and an LSA, the 6th had a general education teacher and a special education teacher. So they were examined by researchers for periods of 15 to 20 minutes in a total of 5 to 10 hours. And from these sessions, individual target behaviours were coded, teacher behaviours were coded, so whether it was a directive, verbal or physical. Duration codes were included, so classroom factors, and there were 2 variables. They were proximity and non-proximity. So to the results, the limitations first. So the limitations of this study, it was purely a descriptive study. There was no experimental analysis, and there was no systematic manipulation of this proximity and non-proximity, purely observational. And it didn't measure this in the light of the variables behind the behaviour. So it didn't look at why the students were engaging in these challenging behaviours or why they weren't engaging. It just looked at how to prevent it. There were also maybe measurement issues, as different students were measured for different periods of time purely for practical reasons. It also didn't collect any specific information on the types of adult directives or the events following target child behaviours with or without proximity. However, to the results, it did really find that adult proximity did positively affect engagement. So when students had a teacher or an LSA within proximity, they engaged more. However, they weren't able to prove much of a link between challenging behaviours and proximity. In some cases it decreased it, some cases it had no effect, and some cases it actually increased it. But I think that this is a very important study, as it proves that proximity positively affects engagement, and if we can increase engagement, then that's just fantastic. So thank you.